Welcome to Circle Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us throughout the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine in all of its forms through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of... Welcome to Urban Unwitches, a podcast to educate, inform, and expand the pagan community. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches, and listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. You can also join us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches. Now, back to the show.
Well, hello again, Reverend Dia.
Hey, Kyler, how you doing?
I am good. I'm sleepy, but good.
You're sleepy but good?
I'm sleepy but good. Yeah.
What's going on in your world today?
Well, I live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, which means the time of year has come where the great dark is ending and the light is returning. It is gorgeous outside. It is bright. It is light. Spring is on its way. Windows are open for the first time because it's been rather chilly, but now we have kind of record warm weather. I am sure this will continue as a trend through a record warm summer. Heaven help us, because we live in a place with no ACs. So
you don't have ACs?
We bought one. It's very rare out here to get an apartment or a house that has central heating and air, because you haven't needed it up until like the last 5 years. It's just not a thing you need. It's even on a warm day where the sun is bright and all that, it's warm, it's comfortable, but we have these soft, cool breezes that come in. And now we don't, because I mean, even the breezes that we get are still warm because of climate change.
Wow.
So because
you lived in the South, so you can't live in the South without AC.
Oh yeah, no, living without AC, that's like self-harm in Florida. Like you could die.
Yeah, it is. And same here in Georgia. But it's been beautiful. I'm with you. It's very springy, and here in Georgia, it's been extremely beautiful, with bright sun and just awesomeness. And I have walked the dogs quite a bit because Tony has gone to New Orleans. My husband has gone to New Orleans on business, and it was funny because he was upset because we're poly. He has 2 girlfriends and a wife, and none of them wanted to go to New Orleans. He was mad. He was like, "What do you mean I can't get somebody to go to New Orleans with me?" It's like, yeah, that's okay. Well, last time we talked about all kinds of terms that had to do with defining what pagan, witch, and Wiccan and all that was. And this time we're going to talk about ethics and liturgy. And I always, when I first came to paganism and they got to talking about liturgy, I wasn't really sure what that was. So you want to describe that?
Yes. So liturgy is any wrote or recited verse that is part of a ritual. So liturgy tends to be often repeated. It doesn't always have to be repeated, but it's oft repeated, and it is in a way the connecting words or verbiage that help to build that group presence within the congregation. And it can also be like direction from your priest or priestess, however you you identify or your group is structured. So liturgy is really important because it often carries the flavor of whatever it is you're doing.
Yep. And one of the biggest pieces of liturgy, and that is most well known in pagan worlds, is these 8 words: the Wiccan read, fulfill, and at harm none, do what you will. So yeah, there's that. And not a lot of people agree with that anymore. It's fallen out of favor in lieu of other people having a more personalized ethical compass, I think is the way to say that. So we're not this idea of and at harm none because that idea is crazy. We
Right.
live on this earth, so we're harming the earth
Right.
just by living.
Yeah.
So it's an undefinable thing. But that goes back to the Gargantua in 1534, right?
Yep.
And it actually goes to, wait, and it harm not, no. It goes to do what you will is the whole of the law.
Yes.
And that is actually what they say in the OTO, which is Aleister Crowley's group. And Doreen Valiente has a really great quote that I'd like to because it explains do what you will is the whole of the law very, very well. And she said, the teachings of Crowley, embodied in the dictum quoted above, do what thou wilt, is by no means new, and it was not invented by him. Long ago, St. Augustine said, love and do what you will. The initiate of ancient Egypt declared, there is no part of me that is not of the gods. The pagan Greeks originated the saying, to the pure, all things are pure. The implication is that when you have reached a high state of spiritual development and evolution, one has passed beyond the comparatively petty rules of religion and society at some particular time and place, and may indeed do what one wills, because one's true will is then knowable and must of its own nature be right. The upshands of sacred scriptures in ancient India tell us that the knower of Brahma, which is enlightenment, is beyond both good and evil. So that when I understood what do what thou wilt was, it made a lot more sense, because I can remember reading Crowley, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. And the rest of that saying, by the way, is do what thou will is the whole of the law, love under will. So that the will is under love. So
So you've thrown some very juicy steaks on the table. Like these are some thick and lovely topics. So earlier you mentioned the 8 words, the most famous 8 words of the Wiccan Rede. So the title of that piece was the Wiccan Rede. It was most probably penned by Doreen Valiente in the form that is most famous now. But by and large, people have kind of turned their back on that oversimplification. There is also another component to it that people have kind of been the gateway to rejecting that philosophy. And it's the couplet that comes after, what ye since forth comes back to thee, so ever mind the rule of 3. The concept of like that, because it's got the number 3 in it, it's holy, that exponential return. So it's basically like a Westerner's attempt to understand very simplified karma. But yeah, no, it's that really comes out of a time when, the only form of paganism that we had in this country was Wicca, like British traditional Wicca that came over and then splintered into 1,000 shimmering little shards and became their own thing. But over time, people began to realize it was very rigid. And in its rigidity, like, Wicca was trying to become more mainstream. It was trying to become a more accepted path for people who were called to it. But in so doing, they had to bring in certain doctrines. And people have kind of said, no, that doctrine that doesn't really work for me.
Well, I think it's also a romanticism, right? I think the British trads and the Gardnerians, they had a romantic view of what witchcraft and paganism was. And I think the Annette Harmon kind of falls into that romantic view, although it's not very practical. And I think that's what's happened over the years. People have looked at the practicality of what the 8 words are, and it is not, it's not been treated well or kindly. And I think that that's largely because people understand that you just can't do it. You brought up karma, and we're not going to say that's cultural appropriation, or are we?
So and another steak hits the table. Like, what are we going to do with all this? We've only got an hour, do you? So yeah, karma, the use of karma as it is understood in the West, is by and large not particularly accurate. the use of karma in Wicca and various little satellite paths is, to my mind, I see it as cultural appropriation.
Right.
If you have not grown up in the systems, in the religious systems that give the cultural connotation to actually understanding karma, um, then don't use the word. I mean, there are other words that you can use, like there's the law of universal return. There's
Right.
even Newton's laws of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's very two-dimensional with what we perceive, but the karma itself has very real cultural connections. If you're not reading the Bhagavad Gita, if you're not reading the Vedas, if you're not a practitioner of these paths, then you probably don't understand karma.
Well, it's kind of like, okay, so just bear with me. I have an
Mm-hmm.
example here about cultural appropriation, and especially when it comes to Hinduism and
Mm-hmm.
India. One of my favorite YouTube shows is called Nazaranaa Diaries. I don't know if you've ever seen this. You have to look it up because because it's about women getting married, but from a Hindu religion. So
Mm-hmm.
they're looking at Hindu dress is what they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at. So you're talking about dupattas, and you're talking about langas and saris, all of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
after watching that show, I would no more go out and buy a langa and wear it
Right.
than I would put on native dress, right? I mean,
Right.
for
Right.
the same reasons, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I think that that's one of the ways we can put karma in that kind of place, along with other things like smudging, which again is cultural appropriation of American Indian. So
Yes.
yeah,
Now, if I
so
if I can actually jump in on the topic of
sure,
smudging real quick.
sure,
So there are a lot of folks who have incorporated smudging into their practice, and they love their practice of smudging. Now, we are not saying that you cannot burn the
right,
sage and all of that. The practice of smudging is more than just lighting it and waving it around. The practice of
right,
smudging actually comes out of a true native practice, and to use it as cultural appropriation. Now, that being said, there is also the practice of seining. There every culture that engages in some kind of ritual cleansing
right.
has a version of burning an incense or something like that. It's just when you call it smudging, that word is refers to a native practice. So, like, I very strongly recommend people to look up the practices of the British Isles. The practice of seining it's got a lot that goes in with it. It's its own art form within the practice itself. So there's a lot to learn there for people who are interested.
Interesting. I have always just said, why don't we just say we're cleansing, right?
Yeah.
And I was raised by that Brit trad, um, High Muckety Muck, Lord
Mm-hmm.
Manawithan, and he always did frankincense and myrrh. So
Mm-hmm.
we weren't a big saging group anyway, and I
Right.
still am not. I don't smell sage and think holy. I smell frankincense and myrrh and think holy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I don't think sage is great. That's just not how we practice particularly. I want to go back. We kind of skipped over the Wiccan Reed history a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about the Wiccan Reed history, you have to talk about the Gargantua, which is where the kind of the origination of the idea comes from, and it goes to Crowley. But the first written version of the Reed that we understand, the long form, because it's a long poem, was written and published by the Green Egg magazine and credited to Lady Gwen
Mm-hmm.
Thompson. And she is no longer with us, but she said that she got this poem from her high muckety muck grand people who were
Mm-hmm.
Wiccan through all the ages of time.
Yes. Yes. Oh
And
my. You're
and
doing
that
this. You're gonna make me rant, Dia.
I
I
had hoped so, but
I
it
try to keep it
also
down.
right. And she's not the only one. It's
Right.
worth it to point out that Alex Sanders of the Alexandrian tradition, which really is the first great break from Gardnerianism, Alex Sanders goes away and then comes back and
Right.
says that he had direct lineage to some person way back in the day. And
Right.
there's still people who will claim this, who will come to newbies and say, yes, I have had, so on, and I'm a family trad, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
always tell them, I know one family trad person. His name is Samuel, and he's my son. And he was raised by pagans. And so
Mm-hmm.
he can tell you he has a family trad because he does.
Right.
But I haven't met many others like that. How
Right.
about you?
I've met a couple. They're usually pretty few and far between. Now the claims of I come from a family trad
Yeah.
are many and varied. So, and I get it. I do. I get it. We are dealing in a world where legitimately the entire religious landscape is basically prejudiced against us. Like, if you are a practicing pagan, it's not the easiest path to walk. I get that. By and large, you're not accepted by the mainstream. I mean, if the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Jehovah's Witnesses are printing up pamphlets literally decrying what you are doing as being of the devil, you feel the weight of those crosshairs. And that's a thing. And, not to throw shade at them, that's what their path preaches. And I've read many a Watchtower and agreed with some of it and disagreed with other things. I actually
No, wait. You can't bring up the Watchtower and not explain what the Watchtower is. Because I know what Watchtower is, but I bet the people listening do not.
So yeah, we're not hailing this particular Watchtower. No, this is the Watchtower is we'll call it a newsletter slash pamphlet slash propaganda arm of a particular religious body. We'll put it that way.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
You see it kind of all over the place. And when it comes to the topic of Wicca specifically and general paganism as a whole, they have learned not to take a fire and brimstone approach to it, because that immediately polarizes the issue. They are much softer about it. It's like people dancing in a meadow with the sun overhead in white dresses, and it's so pretty, very kind of midsummer-esque minus the horror aspect. But is the devil lurking? It
Yes.
kind of it seed plants that doubt that yes, you're going to burn forever in the fires of eternal damnation. That's a hell of a seed plant, I gotta say. But it really is. But the thing is, we deal with this societal thing that witchcraft is bad, okay? And so we need to legitimize ourselves. And so much that comes from the 60s and 70s in Wicca in this country is that desperate need to feel legitimate, that my path and my way is recognized with respect. Because if the last 20 years has taught us anything, it's that everyone wants to feel respected and heard. I mean, that's a life lesson. The problem is that regardless of how you feel about the veracity of Starhawk's The Burning Times mythos and all of that, and the sometimes shoddy history work that went into the various claims made by those early pagans, the Catholic Church did a really good job eradicating any kind of formal pagan practice. And you don't go through centuries of either it's not being believed that it's there or active persecution and still have a lot left over. But that does not stop every young pagan from looking back in their family tree and magically manifesting a great grandmother who was somehow the witch of the cold north or something, like with this ancient lineage.
Exactly. And they were always the big high priestess of the coven. Nobody has ever said to me, I have a great great grandmother who brought me this Wiccan information, and she was just Joe Schmuck pagan.
Right. Right. Well, the easiest way to understand the why on that, Dia, is so I'm a giant Trekkie. I'm a huge nerd. And the one thing out of Star Trek that I've always wanted is the holodeck. I want a holodeck so bad because, oh my goodness, I would love to be the hero, the action star of every one of my little daydreams. Here's the thing.
Come to LARP.
I have been tempted by the LARP many a time. It is a siren song that I've heard. I don't know when I would have time to do this. Even if I had a holodeck, I don't know when I'd have time to visit it.
Not
But
sure.
the thing is, if you're on the holodeck and you are playing, Robin Hood and his men in Sherwood Forest, you're not playing the chamber boy for the Sheriff of Nottingham. You're not the person who cleans out the chamber pots, right? Like, you're going to be Robin, or you're going to be the villain if you're feeling misanthropic that day. But like,
Right.
that's the thing, you're going to be the star of that. So that's the number one indicator that this is probably more wishful thinking than actual history. Because if you look me in the face and say, I can trace my lineage all the way back to the Vegan Matriarchy of Atlantis, I am going to laugh, because I
Yes.
have very poor impulse control. And I don't want to be disrespectful, because we all come from a place. But I have, when I say that I have encountered this particular trope
Yes.
hundreds of times, that's probably the opposite of an
Yep.
exaggeration.
No, I'm with you. That one and the other one I have, that, since we're talking about people who claim things that aren't necessarily true, but my other favorite one is, I've studied under famous witch here.
Yes.
That's the other big one, right? So
Yes.
if they understand enough to not claim familial lineage, because, by the way, the reason you can't claim familial lineage, because most people are saying they have a book of shadows.
Yeah.
And people who were pagan and practiced pagan the longest were uneducated and didn't have reading and writing. And so they wouldn't have written down anything, because that's not how that rolls. Right. And so, that's, if they know enough to do that, then they revert to, and I've studied under fill in the blank here.
Right.
And that one, by the way, you can reach out to fill in the blank and verify. And I encourage people to do this.
Oh, absolutely.
And my favorite one, Starhawk gets this a lot, because Starhawk they have witch camps where people go and get training in a big group. And Starhawk may be one of the presenters, but not necessarily all of them. Selena Fox is another one where Pagan Spirit Gathering happens, and Selena teaches at that. And then people will go to that one event, and then they'll say, well, I was taught by Selena Fox, which is technically true, but that's different than lineage, right? That is different than having a direct, intimate relationship with a mentor that leads you down the path, and a lot of what you are is what they were, and you can kind of have that thread of continuity, like I have with Lord Manawith and with Richard Sells. I have that with Richard, because we were close until he died. So, and that's a different, lineage is different than that. So just be wary. We know that we want newbies to listen to this. And so newbies who are listening to this, be wary of the familial lineage, and be wary of, I've been trained by fill in the famous person here. And you can usually reach out to famous person and say, hey, do you know this person? Have they had intimate training with you? And typically what you're going to hear back from is, and I have a story. I have a story about this. So back when I was a young, impressionable, and had not hooked up with Richard yet, I was going to a metaphysical shop, and this guy had started teaching there. And every time he taught, he started with, I am so-and-so, and I have been taught by Starhawk. And then he would teach, right? Now, it wasn't that his teaching was so bad. It was that he continued to rely on the introduction of, and I've been taught by Starhawk. So I wrote an email to Starhawk, and I actually got confirmation back, not confirmation. What I got was an email back, and I got it from her assistant. Just so we're clear, Starhawk did not write me. It was an assistant, and the assistant said, I don't know what the hell's going on in Atlanta, but clearly you guys are concerned about fill in the blank, because you are the fifth person to write us about this guy. So I laughed And he didn't teach much longer after that, and which is a shame because some of the things he taught I still use today. He didn't need it. He didn't need to say, I was taught by so and so. He didn't need that trope. He was fine all by himself.
Well, that's the thing. That's the confidence that comes from actually having a living practice that you are proud of.
Right.
But I mean, there is to kind of pull from one of the most amazing rants I have ever heard in my life. So I have been very fortunate enough. I am not claiming her as a direct teacher, but I have been very fortunate enough to have many hours spent with Lady Tamara James of Canada. In my heart, she will always be the Witch Queen of Canada. I will love her because she is just the right kind of dramatic. She's also very wise and very charismatic. And she explained to me, really for the first time, why lineage was important, specifically in the Brit trads. And so that's something that kind of probably should bear a moment of explanation for those who are new. When we say Brit trad, we are talking about the British traditions that came out of the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, starting with Gerald Gardner. So I hope that I don't, garner any backlash from saying this. Wicca was founded in the 20s and 30s by Gerald Gardner with the help of Doreen Valiente and their little group. It is a religion born out of what they could find of the remains of British witchcraft. And it, by and large, kept the craft alive. That is all it needs. It doesn't need more than that. It doesn't have to be 10,000 years old. The Atlanteans and their flying cars did not need to practice Wicca in order for it to be valid. That's the big thing there. But this funny thing happens when Saunders breaks off from Gardner, and then 10,000 people break off from Saunders, and it just creates this whole shattering, glimmering glitter effect of different facets and traditions of Wicca. When you've got 20 or 30 different trads out there, what winds up happening is the people who were part of that original Gardnerian and part of that original Alexandrian groups, they started the idea of lineage as a type of, this shows I got traditional training. Because as things spread further and further and further, well, you get really eclectic training. And that's not to say eclectic training is bad, but like there is something to be said for at least knowing the basics in a sequential format. And I've been fortunate enough to have that kind of training, but also there weren't a whole lot of things in it that I hadn't already picked up from other sources. So the important thing, what I'm really trying to say here, is how lineage works. In the Gardnerian, Alexandrian, and most Brit trad systems, and there are some people who view the Odyssean tradition, which I've been affiliated with, as a Brit trad, and then others who would set your house on fire for saying that. Lineage is a very specific relationship. You are oathing with a teacher who is going to take you and be responsible for your training. It is an energetic and almost familial relationship, and you are part of their line, just as they are part of their teacher's line and their teacher's line. Right. I had a wonderful teacher by the name of Donnie, and I am incredibly proud to be part of his lineage. That being said, I don't have a business card that says student of Donnie that I pass out when I am at a mixer. Not that I go to any pagan mixers, but the that does sound nice though, like little pagan mixers we can have. We have
like that here. It's Pagans Night Out.
Really? I see.
Yeah, you should look that up.
Well, we're in Seattle, so it's always, anytime there's a mixer here, it draws a very, we'll say eclectic crowd, but this time eclectic is in quotation marks and it's italicized. So we've literally, from what I understand, there literally was a guy wearing a Superman costume show up at one of these mixers, and I'm like, you may have gone to the wrong pub. It's something I would like to get started eventually when we have enough of a group out here. But lineage is very important to some people. And if you claim a lineage you do not have, just as what happened with this gentleman in Atlanta, somebody's going to check you on it. And, I don't really care one way or the other. I have a lifetime friend out of Donnie and his lovely wife, Militia. But the lineage topic is a huge, huge trigger for a lot of people.
Well, and I think it's funny that lineage is usurped by familial, right?
Hmm.
Um, and my son, even though I have lineage because I was taught in a
Hmm.
Brit trad way, so I have lineage from Richard Sells back. Um, my son, though, would never claim that. Interestingly
Hmm.
enough, he says, I will always claim my mother. My
Right.
mother was where it starts for me. So I think it's interesting how we used to look back at familial and use that as a legitimization, and then we moved
Hmm.
to lineage to be
Hmm.
legitimized, and now we do have generations now of little pagans who were
Yeah.
born and raised pagan, and so they are claiming familial lineage again, and actually
Hmm.
rightfully so because
Right.
they
Right.
were raised that way. I mean, my son is a pagan of four pagans: myself, my husband, my ex, and his wife. All four of us were pagan, so
Hmm.
he's four times over a pagan, um, raised that way. So, and then he chose to be pagan. By the way, we didn't force it on him. He came to his own little conclusion later.
Hmm.
So
Such an
so
important distinction, though, because I have yet to see someone raised within a goddess tradition or an eco spiritual tradition that was not also educated about other religious paths. It is very much their choice because we don't want anybody who doesn't actually want in full knowledge to be part of the fan club.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So we have gone way off the topic.
We Are you surprised?
We
I'm
do
not
this.
surprised. We do, seriously. We,
We do this. So wait,
we
we have to go back. How did we get here? We got here because we
so
were talking
we
about
were
lineage, and that went back to the Wiccan Reed somehow. How did we
well.
go there?
So I mean, it all kind of comes from a source, right? So like the Wiccan Rede as we know it now, where's the Wiccan Rede fulfill in it, harm none, do what you will, ease henceforth comes back to thee. All of that was written by Doreen Valiente, and then sometime later, Lady Gwen Thompson writes her long form of the Rede, which is beautiful prose. I think it's a very pretty poem, but she claimed that it came from time immemorable,
Right,
where her great 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 grandest priestess grandmama had passed this knowledge down, and they've done writing sampling and analysis, and it's very clear that this poem was not even from the earliest it could have been was from like the early 1910s, because it had turns of
right,
phrase in it that didn't even exist in the 1870s. So like we know that it doesn't remove the fact that there's wisdom in it and that it's
right.
beautiful. I love the long form.
Yeah, and it's also the most Thompson's version is the most well known because if you look at the Witch's Creed, which is Doreen Valiente's Wiccan Reed, it is much longer. It is set up in many more stanzas.
Hmm.
It is it's it says about the same thing. It just
Yeah.
says it in a little longer format, longer way.
Hmm.
And Gwen Thompson did really good at rhyming, and that helped.
Because it's not magic if it don't
And
rhyme.
right, well, and it's very easy to read. Live ye must,
Hmm.
and let to live, fairly take, fairly give, from the circle thrice about to weep the unwelcome spirits out, to bind the spell well every time, let the spell be spake and rhyme. It's just
Yep.
it really does flow, and that's part
Hmm.
of why it is much more known than the Witch's Creed, which is
Right.
Doreen Valiente's type.
Right.
And this was all because we were talking about liturgy. And liturgy
Hmm.
is where the ethics and morals for a group first
Hmm.
comes up. And that led us back to and at harm none, do what you will, which we have
Yes.
already established. A lot of people have given that up. But what have they given that up for? I mean, I know when I first came to the craft, I kept looking for the Ten Commandments. Like, where were the Ten Commandments to tell me how to live? Like,
Hmm.
so I just kept looking and looking, and then someone, when I tried to explain what I was looking for, I got these funny looks, and then finally someone went, "Oh, honey, there's no Ten Commandments for witches." I said, "Oh, well, then what is there, right?" And what I came up with are what I call virtues.
Hmm.
So you decide the virtues you want, and one of the virtues in my family coven, and that's a word, by the way, that I coined, family coven. It means the group of people who are intertwined by marriage and or close bonds. They must live together. And then they also practice the craft, and that's a family coven. And in my family coven, one of the things was respectful objection. So Sam could tell me, object to anything he wanted to, if he did it respectfully. And one day I got really mad at Sam, and I was like, just do it. And he said, Mom, that wasn't a respectful objection. And I went, oh, damn it. You're right. Okay, I'm gonna take a time out. And we'll come back and visit this in a minute. But so the virtues are what I kind of did. And my family coven has 13. It's too many, just for the record. 13 is too many. But you can have a certain one. I do this when I am doing premarital counseling. I will talk about that and get them to set their own virtues. And I try to keep them to 5 because 13 is too many. Just have you understood? 13 is too many. So I went to the virtues. Where did you go, Kyler? Like, where did your ethics journey take you?
That is a circuitous and sometimes tawdry route. So I was kind of weaned on the read whenever I was first starting out. Even though I did not love the word Wicca, I very quickly realized that a lot of what they did, I didn't like the high theater of it, and so I kind of lumped it all in together. But
wait. Kyler didn't like high theater?
Kyler did not like high theater.
I am
Kyler
stunned.
Kyler also had nobody else to practice with. So if you're out there quoting lines to yourself, then you look like you're mentally ill. Like, it's a thing. Like, it's like I had some donkeys who might be part of my coven. That was about it. So, and I think even they were judging me for being pompous and emo. I don't know what the
I just see these donkeys going, hee-haw.
Legitimately, I had one hee-haw right behind me at like the culmination of working I was doing on my family's property, and it scared the bejesus out of me. Like, it was, because I mean, Red Ears was loud even for a donkey, and like I almost bit my tongue. Like, it was a whole thing. But yeah, no, mine first went through the read, but I very quickly realized, because I'm one of those people, you give me a rabbit hole, I'm going to hit the bottom of it. So I researched Norse ethics and their concepts, what we knew of the Celts, which frankly isn't a lot. Most everything we know about the Celts is mostly Reconstructionism. But I studied the Greek writings on honor and ethics. And eventually I came to understand the 10 Commandments is not special to Christianity. I mean, it obviously is, but these are the rules by which any society lives. There are certain things you do and certain things you don't if you want to live on the same planet with other people and not constantly be trying to kill each other. Then one day I had a conversation with someone who remains to this day one of my most beloved friends. And we had a conversation about baning and blessing. Now, my friend comes from a long, proud line of Appalachian granny magic practitioners. And we were having a conversation about how hexes work and all of that. And eventually we got around to the point where I made the statement, well, I don't hex. And it wasn't that, I find it's morally reprehensible and all of that. It was, it usually takes entirely too much energy, and emotionally I'm often too lazy for that. Also, anybody that I might want to curse or hex, they have to live their life with themselves. And that kind of person, more often than not, is much more of a bane on themselves than anything I could come up with. It may be a slow burn, but it'll get there. But then she brought up the topic, well, can't you hex a disease or an illness? Like the ancient Greeks would use curse tablets to entrap a disease, and then they would break the tablets. We found hundreds of these all over the Mediterranean. And it tripped me up. And then I went into my little thinking cave and I thought about it for literally years. And I realized the definition of a sin or wrongdoing in the craft, as I had learned it, was filtered through the lens of the 1972 American Council of Witches definition of what magic was: the art of changing chance. So that is what the practicing of magic was. So if you do anything magically that abridges the free will of another person, that is a sin. And from that perspective, if you bring harm to someone, so like we're talking physical, egregious, aggressive harm,
right,
you could terminally cause something, which of course takes all of their free will away. The same thing with all the various other really big crimes that we might commit. You are forever changing that person and abridging their free will. So that worked for me. But what didn't work was how magic within that system might work.
right.
Because everything you do is going to affect someone else's choices. To believe other than that is to not understand how connected everything is. And if you're practicing an eco-spiritual movement, connection is the key, right? So I started thinking about it. And for me, my ethical compass now revolves around the 4 points of, you can call it the witch's pyramid or the legs of the cauldron. There's lots of different metaphors for it, but to know, to will, to dare, and to keep your mouth shut. The reason being, if you know everything about a situation that you can possibly know, 9 times out of 10, you're less likely to act in any way, because you want to do as little as possible in any situation, because you don't need to overwhelm that situation and become the problem. You have to have the will to actually engage with it in the first place. And frankly, the breasticular or testicular fortitude to stand on the tallest mountain in the universe and tell the gods, hey, this thing is going to happen. Because it takes a certain amount of moxie to push your will into the universe. It takes a certain amount of homegrown arrogance to do that. And then if you go around talking about your castings, don't expect any of them to come through, because you're diluting the power that you're putting into that every single time. So that became my compass rose. Because straight up, if someone hurts my family, I could see myself doing protection. I could see myself even lashing out. That being said, I'm not going around casting a whole bunch of hexes. I don't need to.
Well, and I think, magic in and of itself is we're learning that we have these blinders on that are left over from the Abrahamic religions.
Oh, very much.
And
yes.
where we have this idea of right and wrong, and that's the only two ways. And witches are famously known as the gray. So they're neither white nor black, nor right nor wrong. They're somewhere in the middle, depending on what's going on. One of the things I ask new students is, would you steal? And they always go, no, I would never steal. And then I go, well, if your child was starving and you were starving, would you steal? And they were like, well, now wait a minute. To feed my child, I might steal. I'm like, okay, so you would steal. The bottom line is you would steal. That's the bottom line. Yep. And so it pulls them out of this idea of rightness and wrongness, sin and not sin, and into an idea of situational ethics. And I think that's what a lot of pagans and Wiccans and witches today are dealing with. They couldn't tell you how they would behave every time, because they don't have all the information for the time you want them to behave.
Right.
If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I think it did.
Yeah, there's so there are 2 quotes, both drawn from very nerdy sources. So one comes from Star Trek Discovery. Orders are for pawns, but context, Burnham. Context is for kings.
Yep.
So everything has its own context. When you create a rule that is sans context, you are basically asking for that rule to not be applicable. The other thing, the other quote that I would pull upon comes from the greatest master I have ever known, the venerable General Obi-Wan Kenobi. Only Sith and fools deal in absolutes.
Right.
So when you create a rule that is a blanket statement, you are ensuring that that rule will not fit every situation and will by and large fit few situations. Our ethics are how we would react in a situation. And if we do something that we find to be unethical, it's our job to fix that and find out where we went wrong. And that's the difference between having a living, breathing, dynamic ethical compass and one that is handed to you like a birthday present. You
You
have
know
to
it.
go
Go
ahead, sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, that's the big difference between taking the time to develop one for yourself and then
Right.
accepting someone else's wisdom as trough.
Well, and it was a hard lesson that I learned early on because I was part of a big, large group here in the South,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a big thing about they literally had a definition for your word of honor, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like they had all these micromanaged definitions about what was right and wrong, right? And if you gave your word, then there was no reason at all ever to take that back. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's dangerous, quite frankly. And I gave my word that I would be there and do a bunch of things for them. And then my soul said, no, something's wrong here. And
Mm-hmm.
it turns out that there were bad people within that group doing very, very bad things that we can't say because we would be monetized. So we
Yes.
can't say those things, but they were doing those things. And so I left, and they called me oathbreaker because I wouldn't stay in a group that allowed those things to happen. So
Right.
I think you have to be really careful when you get to talking about what you will and won't do. And when you deal in absolutes, you're bound to have a problem. Um, as to put it as a wise man once said, never say never.
Yes. All things in moderation,
All
including
things in
moderation.
moderation, right?
No, it's a very hard one. See, I firmly believe this. If you are going to gain wisdom, the most powerful lessons we get always comes through some kind of suffering. So if I'm going to suffer through something, by and large, I'm a comfort cow. I don't want to have emotional, physical, monetary, no kind of discomfort because I have a thin skin and am very sensitive. So if I'm going to suffer for something, I want to get all the wisdom out of it I possibly can.
Yeah.
And that lesson that you learned sounds like it was paid for very dearly for
Yep.
years after.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. But it taught me a lot about something that I think is essential in witchcraft, and that is to know your own
Mm-hmm.
sovereignty, to understand that you are queen, you are king, you that in when we talk about Christianity, we talk about grace and how the buck stops with Jesus, and in witchcraft,
Yes.
we talk about the buck stopping with ourselves.
Oh,
Doesn't go
yes.
anywhere else. It's you, and that's where it's going to stop. And so you have to really be clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And because we're talking about magic, I'm going to pick on my husband. So because magic energy is chaos, and if you
Mm-hmm.
put magic out there, you do not know what you're going to get back.
Right.
My husband, one time we were doing energetic working with the coven, and he decided that he wanted more confidence. And so we did this big working around him getting confidence. And then
Mm-hmm.
the next day he went to work and got fired. So if you need confidence, evidently, as soon as you get fired, you're going to have to find that to get another job. And so he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he successfully got a job right away. No big deal. But he took a job because he didn't have enough confidence. He took a job with a really, really bad guy. And this guy was very verbally not so nice. And so he did a lot of things that were maybe ethically not so good. And
Right. Right.
it took my husband 2 years before he was able to come home and say, I quit. Like I had enough. And then he was able to get a job where he liked the people he was working with and things where
Mm-hmm.
he found his confidence, right? And it was when he quit that he found his confidence. That's 2 years, people, if you're keeping score, right? So he did this. And since magic is chaos and energy is chaos and you don't know where that's going to go, this is why Kyler and I are talking about doing magic sparingly, because
Yes.
we have come to understand and we have watched and we have seen people do magic and have it not work out quite the way they had hoped, right?
Mm-hmm.
A really great book on this is When, Why, If. It's out of print. If you can find When, Why, If by Robin Wood, it is a fabulous read, and it really kind of digs into this idea of and at harm none, do what you will, but it also digs into situational ethics, and it really kind of explores that and the gray area of everything, and it's a really great read. It's one that I recommend, but you'll have to get it at a used store because you're not going to find it in print anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, so many of the really great books that I grew up with, you really can't find anymore. And like you earlier, you had mentioned something. It's like if someone says, and I studied with fill in the blank, you send that person an email. One of the things that's weighed very much on my mind in the last few years is how many of these old first line pagans we're losing. You know, most of them are up there in age, and there is so much wisdom, there's so much life experience, and if we do not reinvest that in today's generation, we'll lose some of that wisdom. I mean, every generation that's lost something leaves the world and makes room for something else to grow. But I mean, that's the way of the natural world. But you know, in the last 10, 15 years, we've lost a lot of really amazing people. And it's sad that they're not out there to be able to raise their voice with these young pagans that are coming up, because in a digital world,
Right.
it looks so different. Like
Right.
it looks so different. Even as a child of the 90s, you know, there was still if you wanted to find a coven or a group, you would go to your local occult shop if you could find
Yep.
one,
Mm-hmm.
and you would hang out there until somebody invited you for tea.
Yep.
And you know, if it was a good fit, or hell, half the time even when it wasn't, you showed up, and then the next thing you know, you're initiated, and then you get to learn about this wide world of witchcraft. But the nowadays, it's you Google things, you find online chat groups, and there's Witch Talk, which I spent some time there and was overwhelmed very quickly. It was a lot of stimuli. But that's where young pagans are learning their ethics from these days. It's not even the read. It's they are learning from this myriad of sources, just like our kids in high schools today, because it's a
Yeah, and
digital world.
it is a digital world, and it does leave behind an entire generation of pagans that have gone before us, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
shame. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to talk about pagan history, even though we're a young religion and our history is not very old. You know, we still need to be talking about it because that's how we're going to keep remembering all of these
Mm-hmm.
wise words and wisdoms that we got from the people who have gone before. But don't worry, we're going to have Oberon Zellravenheart forever. Okay.
Yes, I that man has a shelf life longer than jerky. He just keeps it trucking.
Yep, he's never going to die. So
Yeah,
we'll have him forever. That'll be good.
yeah.
So
And also possibly Starhawk. I mean,
yes.
she's still trucking along too.
Yep. Well,
I
and
will.
we'll have to say Selena Fox is in there too.
That is true. I will
She's
fully
trucking
admit
too.
I got to have my first email exchange with Selena Fox, and I was fangirling over an email. I'll be honest. Um, she said my words were good, and that made me happy. Um, I, it is definitely better than the time I passingly met Reba McIntyre, which will go down with me into my grave as one of the top 5 most embarrassing things this universe has ever witnessed. Um, if you are 6'1" and 260 pounds of fairly imposing ginger, do not start screaming, "Oh my God, it's fancy," so that your friend has to drag you away. Um, there's no pride or dignity after that. You're just
And she probably didn't even hear you. And if she did, she was like, "Oh God."
Oh no, she did. She
Oh
did.
no.
I'm sure she did. There was this little this chuckle, and then she just kind of walked back, and then she had a big old mug of coffee and everything, and I was just like, the whole way there, I'm like, I got to meet Fancy, and I acted like a complete and utter jackass. And that's the, you know, those moments when you're socially inept, and you know you're socially inept, and you
Yes.
go from one moment of, oh my God, I did that in front of people, to the next. That one, and you just know when you do something monumentally terrible in a social setting, and you're like, I'm going to lay awake at night and think about this when I'm 40. And I do.
Oh my God. So true, so true, so true, so true. I was no, I have okay. So I LARP, and you guys know that I LARP, and I'm going to talk about it a lot. You just have to settle in for that. But I would say that LARP does help cure you from this affliction, right? Because you learn that nothing is too crazy for you to do in the moment. One time we were sitting around, and I mean, I had been LARPing all of 2 seconds, and I'm with all of these people who are LARPing, and we're pretending to be our characters and talking, and they got to talking about hot dogs. And I was like, started giggling because the only thing I could think of was Goofy going, hot dog, hot diggity dog. And so they're like, why are you giggling? And so I stood up and did it.
And you found your tribe.
Yes, I still think about that and go, what the hell was I thinking? Oh my goodness.
I believe.
Uh-huh.
No, I was going to say, I believe 100% that our lives are more enjoyable because we have poor impulse control.
I concur. Absolutely. Yes. Poor impulse control is a thing, and it's
raised
good.
And seconded.
And we once again veered off topic. That's okay.
We have more tangents than a geometry class.
That was really bad.
I know. That was punishment.
Oh no.
I have to have a kid so I have a reason to have dad jokes. No, this is just me.
Yes. Absolutely. So we got the way we got here was talking about magic and talking about the unpredictability of energy and why even though hexing and blessing even doing just general magic is something that a lot of your older practitioners approach very gingerly because they've learned something from doing all of these workings, right? And so sorry, just total aside, I just suddenly got to thinking about the president, and I was thinking about how at Mar-a-Lago they keep digging up witch bottles.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. I do not 100% know the veracity of this, but apparently I have read in a couple of places online, so you know it's true because it's on the internet, y'all. They keep finding witch bottles on the grounds around Mar-a-Lago, so they have to like sweep them with metal detectors. I mean, I'm not saying that baneful magic is, having an effect on him. I'm just saying he looks like he does chemotherapy recreationally. The man looks
that's true.
But I mean,
anyway,
also, yeah.
The reason I thought about that is because I do a lot of the baneful magic that you hear talk about, it has to do with our political issues in the world. And my suggestion is you make a little jar and you put oil and herbs and stuff, you write your spell in it, and you leave it open-ended, and once you have it, then you go around and you shake it vigorously whenever you get mad. And so it not only acts as a spell, you're powering your own spell, and you're also getting out some of your frustration at the same time. That's my recommendation. That's how we do it in our coven.
Yeah, it's this is actually, it's so funny that you bring this up because I lately, the last 3 weeks, so I have never lived in a place where there is an absence of the sun. And now 3 years in the Pacific Northwest, we go through the Great Dark, which, we're much higher above the equator than we are in Florida, and we're higher elevation, and it's usually pretty overcast. So I'm dealing with SAD for the first time, so seasonal affective disorder. So the last 3 weeks have just been an uphill slog for me. And on top of that, there have been, the usual work nonsenses and all that, but I'm usually pretty good about kind of keeping them in their place. I realized that I was hearing nothing but negative things from like nearly every friend in my inner sphere. People who are calm, people who are reasonable and rational. I had a young friend of mine who I say young, he's over 30 now. One day you wake up and you're not young anymore, and all of your friends are not young anymore, and it comes as a surprise because you remember when they were 21. so yeah, he's probably one of the most placid men I know, and he almost threw hands in the gym because people were they were just tap dancing on his last nerve. And it feels like the tension, the pressure point in the world has gone up. And so like the other day, I sat down for the first time and I did some meditation, and I did some very basic elemental energy exercises that I have not done, I kid you not, in like 7 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, you eventually get to a point where you don't have to consciously do it, you do it automatically, and then over time you kind of don't do it as much as you should. Right. Yeah. But that, I mean, that's the thing, is like I realized that actually going through and doing an elemental balancing within myself was so incredibly helpful. I walked away from that feeling like I wasn't powerless anymore. And when I wasn't bowed in the shoulders by carrying all of this sense of impotence and anger at the world, it freed me up so much. And then I got excited about things again, and I actually sat down and I did artwork for the first time in probably 3 weeks. Wow. So it was nice. It was much needed. So,
and that leads us right into resiliency, and I really like the idea of using energetics to help build your resiliency. Doing simple energetic exercises of grounding and centering would be a really great way to build your resiliency. And then I also think learning to speak positively is a good way to build resiliency. Meaning, you know, as you said, everybody around you was having this negative self-talk that you were having to kind of wade through. And so you have to learn to try to build some positivity in your life. And that's why one of the things you can do is to write down 3 positive things every day. That's another way to build resiliency, is to, and full sentences, not just I got ice cream, but you know, a full sentence. What was the ice cream like? Right. Not, and dig deep for these, because good things do happen every day. It just does, it doesn't mean that you remember that or that you notice that in the moment, especially with so much pressure to succumb, so to speak. So that is a lot. We covered a lot today.
We did, yeah. Look at us being efficient.
So next time we'll probably talk about the next. For us, what would have been the next High Holy Day, which would have been Ostara. We could talk about the Wheel of the Year a little bit, and about Beltane, all of which are about to come up. So we can talk about that next time. I am so glad that you joined me again, Kyler. I'm sorry that you're tired, and I hope next time we are even more energetic and even more crazy and spontaneous and have a lot of spontaneity. I would say thank you for being with us, and may you have a magical day. And what would you say, Kyler?
I have decided I'm going to sign off each time with a different quote. And today, given that we have talked about the difficulties in the world, I'm going to sign off with a non carborundum illegitimus. Don't let the bastards wear you down. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
So mote it be. Thank you for listening to Urban Unwitches. Please reach co-host Kyler Pettry and Rev Dia at urbanunwitches@gmail.com. That's urbanunwitches@gmail.com to suggest topics for shows or comment on past episodes. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches. Follow us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches to watch all episodes. And listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. Rev Dia is a witch for hire as an officiant, life coach, astrologer, geomancer, and medium, and can be reached at www.revdia.net. See you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Circle Podcast, presented by Circle Sanctuary, and produced for all who follow nature-centered paths. Join us throughout the week for various programming connecting with the community around the world. Please don't forget to watch for updates on the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Follow us on Facebook at Facebook/Circle Podcasts. We can also be found on your favorite podcast hosting sites, such as iTunes, Spotify, and others. Until next time, many blessings.